The clock on the wall showed 11:45 p.m. Jinwoo Kim was the only person left in the lab. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, but Jinwoo liked working late. The quiet helped him think. Just a few more calculations, he said to himself, tapping on his keyboard. His eyes were tired, but his mind was still racing. Jinwoo was the best aerospace engineer at the Seoul Research Center. His bosses praised his work, but his coworkers found him strange. He rarely joined them for lunch or drinks after work. He preferred to be alone with his ideas and projects. Tonight, Jinwoo was working on a new fuel system for space travel. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as numbers and formulas filled the screen. Suddenly, the lights in the lab flickered. Jinwoo looked up, confused. "Power problems again," he muttered, saving his work. The lights flickered once more, then went out completely. The room was dark except for the glow of his computer screen. Then, even that died. Jinwoo stood up. Something was wrong. The research center had backup generators. The power should never go completely out. He walked to the window and pulled open the blinds. What he saw made him step back in shock. A bright light, stronger than anything he had ever seen, hung in the sky above the building. It wasn't the moon. It wasn't a helicopter. It was something else. The light began to move, dropping lower until it was directly outside his window. Jinwoo couldn't look away. The light was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What is that?" he whispered, as if answering his question. A beam of light shot from the object through the window. It didn't break the glass. Instead, it passed through as if the window wasn't there. The beam touched Jinwoo's chest. He tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. A strange warmth spread through him. His eyelids grew heavy. "No," he tried to say, but no sound came out. The room around him faded away. When Jinwoo opened his eyes again, he was lying on a smooth, cold surface. He blinked several times, trying to clear his vision. This wasn't his lab. This wasn't anywhere he recognized. He was in a small room with walls that seemed to be made of crystal. They glowed with a soft blue light. There was no door that he could see. No windows, just smooth crystal walls on all sides. Jinwoo sat up slowly. His head hurt, and his mouth was dry. He touched the wall nearest to him. It was cool and smooth, like glass but stronger. "Hello," he called out. His voice echoed in the small space. "Is anyone there?" No one answered. Jinwoo stood up carefully. The ceiling was high enough for him to stand straight. He walked around the small room, touching each wall, looking for a way out. There was nothing. "This can't be happening," he said, but deep down he knew what this was. He had been taken, abducted. The light in the sky hadn't been from Earth. Hours passed. Jinwoo tried everything he could think of to escape. He pushed against the walls. He looked for hidden switches or panels. He even tried shouting for help. Nothing worked. Just as he was about to give up, one of the crystal walls began to change. It became transparent, like a window. Jinwoo rushed to it and looked out. Beyond the wall was a massive space, bigger than any room he had ever seen. Strange machines lined the walls. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it, and moving around the room were creatures unlike anything on Earth. They were tall, at least 7 feet high. Their bodies reminded Jinwoo of insects, with thin limbs and hard outer shells. But they walked on 2 legs and used their upper limbs like arms. Their heads were the most alien part, large with compound eyes that shimmered in the light. As Jinwoo watched, frozen in shock, the wall in front of him disappeared completely. 2 of the insect creatures stood there, looking at him with their strange eyes. They carried long staffs that glowed at the tips. One of them made a series of clicking sounds. When Jinwoo didn't move, the creature pointed its staff at him, then at the doorway. The message was clear: "Follow us." With no other choice, Jinwoo stepped out of his crystal cell and into a world beyond his imagination. Jinwoo walked between the 2 insect guards. His heart beat fast in his chest. The hallway they moved through was huge, with a high ceiling that curved like the inside of a shell. The walls glowed with the same blue light as his cell. Other insect aliens passed by. They all stopped to look at Jinwoo. Some made clicking sounds to each other. Jinwoo felt like an animal in a zoo. "Where are you taking me?" he asked the guards. They didn't answer. Maybe they couldn't understand him. After many turns and long hallways, they came to a massive door. It was made of the same crystal-like material as everything else, but it shimmered with many colors. The guards stopped and stood straight. One of them waved a hand over a panel on the wall. The great door slid open without a sound. Jinwoo gasped at what he saw. Beyond the door was the largest room yet. It was round, with a high dome ceiling that looked like the night sky, complete with stars. In the center of the room was a raised platform. All around were more of the insect aliens, standing in neat rows. The guards poked Jinwoo with their staffs, pushing him forward. He walked slowly into the room. The door closed behind him. All the aliens turned to look at him. Jinwoo felt very small and very alone. "Come forward, human," a voice said. Jinwoo jumped in surprise. The voice had spoken in perfect Korean. It was soft but strong, like music. "You understand me?" Jinwoo asked. "We have studied your languages for many years," the voice answered. "Please approach the throne." Jinwoo looked toward the center platform. There was indeed a throne there, larger than he had first noticed, and on it sat. She was like the other aliens, but also very different. Her body was taller, slimmer, and covered in a shell that shimmered with all colors of light. Where the other aliens looked plain, she looked like a jewel. Her compound eyes were larger, a deep purple color that seemed to see right through him. This was clearly their leader. Jinwoo walked forward slowly. The alien guards on either side of the room watched his every move. When he reached the bottom of the platform, he stopped. He didn't know what to do. Should he bow? Kneel? What was the right way to greet an alien queen? Before he could decide, the queen stood up. She was even taller standing, at least 9 feet high. Her movements were smooth and graceful, not jerky like the guards. "You are Jinwoo Kim," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Jinwoo replied. "How do you know my name?" The queen didn't answer. She stepped down from her throne and moved closer to Jinwoo. The other aliens in the room made nervous clicking sounds. This was clearly not normal. She stopped right in front of him. Up close, Jinwoo could see small patterns on her shell that looked like writing. He could smell a strange, sweet scent coming from her. Without warning, the queen reached out. Jinwoo flinched, expecting to be grabbed or hurt. Instead, her arms went around him in what could only be described as a hug. Jinwoo stood frozen in shock. The alien queen was hugging him. Her shell was warm against his body, not cold like he expected. The room had gone completely silent. The queen lowered her head next to his ear. He felt her breathe in deeply, as if smelling him. Then she spoke, so quietly that only he could hear. Finally, she breathed, her voice full of emotion. "I found you, my human." Jinwoo couldn't move. His mind raced with confusion. What did she mean? Why was she calling him her human? The queen released him and stepped back. The room erupted with sounds of shock. The insect aliens clicked and buzzed to each other. Some even moved forward as if to protect their queen. "Silence," the queen commanded, and everyone went quiet again. She turned back to Jinwoo. "I am Mireille, queen of the Dolken Empire. We have much to discuss." Jinwoo found his voice at last. "Why am I here? Why did you take me?" Queen Mireille's compound eyes seemed to soften. "Because, Jinwoo Kim, you are the one we have waited for, the one who will save us all." Queen Mireille led Jinwoo to a smaller room away from the throne room. This space felt more private. A large round table stood in the center, with chairs that looked made for the insect-like aliens, One smaller chair seemed to have been placed there just for him. "Please sit," Queen Mireille said, taking her own seat at the head of the table. Jinwoo sat down carefully. Two other aliens entered the room. One was a guard he recognized from earlier. The other was slightly smaller than the rest, with markings on its shell that looked like symbols or writing. "This is Taejun," the queen said, pointing to the guard. "He will protect you during your stay with us." Taejun made a low bow to Jinwoo but said nothing. "And this," the queen continued, "is Hana, our chief scientist." The smaller alien stepped forward. "Is this really necessary, my queen?" Hana asked. Her voice was higher and sharper than the queen's. "We could simply take what we need from this human." Jinwoo tensed in his chair. Take what they need. What did that mean? "That is not our way, Hana," Queen Mireille said firmly. "The prophecy is clear." "Prophecy?" Jinwoo asked. "What prophecy? What are you talking about?" Queen Mireille turned her purple eyes to him. "Our people, the Dolkins, are very old, Jinwoo Kim. We have traveled the stars for thousands of years, but now we face our end." She waved a hand, and the lights in the room dimmed. Above the table, a hologram appeared. It showed images of the insect aliens, but many looked sick or weak. Some had broken shells or missing limbs. 200 years ago, we noticed the first signs," Queen Mireille explained. "Our people began to get sick. Children were born weak. Each generation is less healthy than the one before." Hana stepped forward. "Our DNA is breaking down," she said. "We call it the Great Decay. Nothing we try stops it. In 6 generations, there will be no more Dolkins." Jinwoo looked at the sad images floating above the table. "I'm sorry," he said, "but what does this have to do with me?" Queen Mireille stood and walked around the table. The hologram changed to show ancient-looking symbols. 500 years ago, our greatest prophet had a vision. She saw our people dying, but she also saw hope. The queen touched one of the symbols, and it grew larger. She saw a small, soft-skinned being from a distant world who would save us from extinction. The hologram changed again, showing a crude drawing that looked somewhat like a human. "At first, we didn't know what this meant," Queen Mireille continued. "Then, 100 years ago, our ships found Earth. We watched your people from afar. We studied you, and we realized the human DNA has something unique, something that could cure the Great Decay." Hana made an annoyed clicking sound. "The queen believes in stories. I believe in science. Yes, human DNA might help us, but one random human won't save our species." "He is not random," Queen Mireille said sharply. She turned back to Jinwoo. "Our scientists tested thousands of humans. Secretly, we took small samples while they slept. Never harming, just learning." Jinwoo felt a chill. They had been visiting Earth, taking DNA samples from sleeping humans. "Your DNA is special, Jinwoo Kim," the queen said. "It matches exactly what we need. The prophecy described you perfectly. Your genetic code, your blood type, even the small scar on your left hand." Jinwoo looked down at his hand in shock. He did have a small scar there, from a childhood accident. "This is crazy," he said. "I'm just an engineer. I'm not special." "To us, you are," Queen Mireille said gently. "You are our last hope." Hana stepped forward again. "Even if this human matches the prophecy, how exactly is he supposed to save us? We need to run tests, take samples." "In time, Hana," the queen interrupted. "First, our guest needs rest and time to understand his role." "My role?" Jinwoo asked. "What exactly do you want from me?" Queen Mireille's compound eyes seemed to soften. "We need your help to create a cure. Your DNA contains patterns that resist decay. Patterns our scientists can use to fix our own DNA." "And if I don't want to help?" Jinwoo asked quietly. The room went silent. Taejun's hand moved to his weapon. Hana made a harsh clicking sound. But Queen Mire simply said, "Then we would return you to Earth, and the Dolken people would prepare for extinction. The prophecy says you will help us, but we cannot force you. The choice must be yours." Jinwoo looked around the room. At the fierce guard, the skeptical scientist, and the hopeful queen. An entire species was looking to him for salvation. "I need time to think," he said at last. Queen Mire nodded. "Of course. Taejun will show you to your quarters. Tomorrow, we can speak more." As Jinwoo stood to leave, the queen added, "Thank you for listening, my human." The room they gave Jinwoo was much nicer than the cell he first woke up in. It had a bed that adjusted to fit his body perfectly. The walls could change color when he touched them. There was even a small pool of water for bathing. Jinwoo had been on the ship for 3 days now. Each day, Taejun came to his room in the morning to guide him around the massive ship. "Today, I will show you how we eat," Taejun said as they walked down a wide hallway. Jinwoo nodded. He was hungry. The food they had given him so far was strange. Soft cubes that tasted like nothing he could name. They kept him full, but he missed the taste of real food. "Do you have any spicy food?" Jinwoo asked. Taejun's head tilted to the side. "Spicy? I do not know this word." Jinwoo tried to explain. "Food that burns your tongue a little, makes your mouth feel hot. You eat food that hurts you." Taejun seemed shocked. Humans are very strange. They entered a large room filled with Dolkens sitting at tables. All eyes turned to look at Jinwoo. By now, he was used to being stared at. "This is our eating hall," Taejun explained. "Each Dolken gets food based on their rank and job." Jinwoo noticed that some Dolkens ate from metal bowls, while others used simple trays. "What is your rank?" Jinwoo asked. "I am a 3rd-level guardian," Taejun said proudly. "My family has served the royal family for 12 generations." "Your family?" Jinwoo was surprised. "You have families like humans do." Taejun made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Not like humans. We do not choose our mates. The queen decides which Dolkens should breed to make the strongest children." Jinwoo frowned. "That seems cold." "It is efficient," Taejun replied. "Is it true that humans choose their own mates based on feelings?" "Yes," Jinwoo said. "We call it love." "Love." Taejun repeated the word carefully. "Our scientists have studied this concept. It seems very inefficient." Before Jinwoo could respond, a hush fell over the room. He turned to see Queen Mire entering the eating hall. This was unusual, based on how everyone was reacting. The queen walked directly to Jinwoo's table. All the Dolkens bowed their heads. "I hope you are enjoying your tour," Queen Mire said to Jinwoo. "Yes, thank you," Jinwoo replied. "Your ship is amazing." "Would you join me for a private meal?" the queen asked. "I have many questions about Earth." Taejun seemed surprised by this invitation, but he said nothing as Jinwoo followed the queen out of the eating hall. They went to a small room with a view of space through a large window. Stars streaked by as the ship moved. "Are we traveling?" Jinwoo asked, looking at the stars. "Yes," Queen Mire said. "We are returning to our home world. We will arrive in 7 days." Food was brought in by servants. To Jinwoo's surprise, there was fruit that looked almost like apples and something that resembled bread. "We tried to make food similar to what you eat on Earth," the queen explained. "Is it acceptable?" Jinwoo took a bite of the apple-like fruit. It was sweeter than he expected, but good. "It's wonderful," he said. "Thank you." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Queen Mire asked, "Tell me about human art. Do you create things that have no purpose?" Jinwoo thought about this. "Yes, we create many things just because they're beautiful. Music, paintings, sculptures. Fascinating," the queen said. "We only create things that serve a purpose. Beauty is secondary." "That's sad," Jinwoo said without thinking. Instead of being offended, the queen seemed interested. "Why is it sad?" Because beauty itself has value, Jinwoo explained. It makes life worth living. Queen Mireille was quiet for a moment. You speak of purpose beyond survival. This is very human. What about fun? Jinwoo asked. Do Dolkins play games or just do things for enjoyment? Young Dolkins play to learn skills, the Queen said. Adults work for the good of all. There is satisfaction in serving one's purpose. Jinwoo shook his head. On Earth, even adults play games, dance, tell jokes. Jokes? Queen Mireille asked. Stories with surprising endings that make people laugh, Jinwoo explained. Can you tell me a joke? The Queen asked. Jinwoo thought for a moment, then smiled. Why did the chicken cross the road? The Queen's head tilted in confusion. What is a chicken? Jinwoo laughed. This might be harder than I thought. For the next hour, Jinwoo tried to explain human humor, music, and art to the Queen. She asked many questions and seemed truly interested in understanding. As Jinwoo was leaving, Queen Mireille said, You have given me much to think about, my human. Perhaps there is more to learn from your species than just your DNA. Jinwoo nodded. And I still have much to learn about yours. Jinwoo was in his room when the first blast hit the ship. The floor shook beneath him. The lights flickered and turned red. What's happening? He said to himself as he tried to keep his balance. The door to his room slid open. Taejin stood there, holding his staff weapon. We are under attack, Taejin said. I must take you to a safe place. Another blast rocked the ship. This time, Jinwoo fell to his knees. Who's attacking us? Jinwoo asked as he got up. The Voraks, Taejin replied. Space pirates. They hunt weak ships. Our ship sent out signals that our systems are failing. The Voraks smell easy prey. Taejin led Jinwoo through hallways filled with running Dolkins. Some were injured, their hard shells cracked and leaking the blue fluid. They reached a large room with thick walls. Many Dolkins were already inside, including some children. Jinwoo had never seen Dolkin children before. They were smaller, with softer shells and larger eyes. Stay here, Taejin ordered. I must help fight. Before Taejin could leave, another huge blast hit the ship. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, Jinwoo heard Dolkins clicking in fear. Emergency lights came on a moment later, but they were dim. A voice came over speakers in the wall. Damage to level 7 sections 10 through 15. Life support failing in those sections. Jinwoo grabbed Taejin's arm. Level 7. Isn't that where the Queen's rooms are? Taejin's eyes widened. Yes, but she should be in the command center. Another message came through the speakers. Air pumps failing on level 7. All systems failing. Jinwoo remembered something from his tour of the ship. The backup systems should be working. Why aren't they working? I don't know, Taejin said. Our technology is old. Many systems have been failing lately. Jinwoo thought quickly. Take me to level 7. No, it's not safe. I'm an engineer, Jinwoo insisted. I might be able to help. Taejin hesitated, then nodded. They ran through the ship, climbing stairs when the lifts wouldn't work. When they reached level 7, smoke filled the hallways. Dolkin workers were trying to open a sealed door. The Queen is trapped inside. One worker said, the door control is damaged, and the air is leaking out of that section. Without the right tools, the Dolkins were struggling to open the heavy door. Jinwoo looked around and saw a panel on the wall. Is that the control panel for this section? He asked. Yes, a worker replied, but it's dead. No power. Jinwoo went to the panel anyway. He pulled off the cover. Inside were circuits and wires unlike any he had seen before, but he understood the basic idea of how they should work. I need light, he said. Taejin came over and made his staff glow brighter. Jinwoo studied the circuits. Some were burned out. I need something that conducts electricity, Jinwoo said. Something metal and thin. A Dolken worker handed him a tool that looked like a screwdriver. Jinwoo used it to connect two circuits, bypassing the damaged parts. Then he took two wires and crossed them. Sparks flew, and Jinwoo jumped back. But the panel lit up. It worked, he said. He pressed what he hoped was the door control. The sealed door slid open halfway, then stopped. But it was enough. Dolken guards rushed in. Moments later, they came out carrying Queen Mirai. She looked weak, her shell pale. "She needs air," a guard said. Once they reached a safe area, the queen was given oxygen. Her color slowly returned. When she opened her eyes, she saw Jinwoo standing nearby. "My human," she said weakly. "You helped save me." "I just opened a door," Jinwoo said. "You thought differently than we would have," said a voice behind him. It was Hana, the scientist. "We would have tried to cut through the door. It would have taken too long. The queen would have died." Jinwoo was surprised. This was the first nice thing Hana had said to him. "Sometimes a fresh view helps," Jinwoo said. "Perhaps," Hana admitted, "but don't think this makes you special." After the attack ended, Jinwoo learned that the Voraks had been driven away. But the ship was damaged and moving slowly. That night, Queen Mirai visited Jinwoo in his room. "Thank you for your help today," she said. "You're welcome," Jinwoo replied. "But I'm curious, why did your systems fail so badly? A ship this advanced should have better backups." The queen's eyes dimmed. "The Great Decay affects not just our bodies, but our minds too. Our engineers aren't as clever as they once were. Our technology is failing because we are failing. That's why you need humans," Jinwoo realized. "Not just for our DNA, but for our minds too." "Yes," Queen Mirai said softly, "but we need more than that from you, my human. Much more." Jinwoo felt uneasy at her words. "What exactly do you need from me?" The queen looked away. "All will be explained when we reach our world. Rest now. This is where we will work," Hana said, leading Jinwoo into a large room filled with strange equipment. "Our main laboratory." It had been 2 days since the Voraks attack. The ship was moving again, but slowly. They would reach the Dolken homeworld in 5 more days. Jinwoo looked around the lab with wide eyes. There were machines he couldn't begin to understand. Glowing containers held samples of things he couldn't name. Screens showed moving images of cells and DNA. "It's amazing," Jinwoo said, "but I don't know how I can help. I'm an aerospace engineer, not a doctor or biologist." Hana made a clicking sound that Jinwoo had learned meant annoyance. "The queen insists you work with me, so here you are." Jinwoo could tell Hana still didn't like him. But after he had helped save the queen, she seemed to respect him a little more. "Tell me about the Great Decay," Jinwoo said. "Show me what it looks like." Hana touched a screen. It lit up with images of DNA strands. "This is healthy Dolken DNA from 500 years ago," she explained. Then she touched the screen again. "And this is Dolken DNA today." Even Jinwoo could see the difference. The newer DNA looked broken in places, with strange additions in others. "It gets worse each generation," Hana said. "Children are born weaker. Many don't survive their first year." "And you think human DNA can fix this?" Jinwoo asked. "Not just any human DNA," Hana replied. "Yours specifically. It has a unique pattern that matches gaps in our own." For the next few hours, Hana explained the problem in more detail. She showed Jinwoo test results, genetic models, and failed cures they had tried. Despite not being a biologist, Jinwoo asked good questions. His engineering mind saw patterns where Hana saw only data. "What if you look at it like this?" Jinwoo suggested, drawing a diagram on a screen. "In engineering, when we have a failing system, sometimes we need to rebuild from scratch, not just fix the broken parts." Hana stared at his diagram. "That's not how biology works." But she paused, thinking. "The approach has merit. Over the next 3 days, Jinwoo and Hana worked together. At first, she dismissed many of his ideas, but slowly she began to see value in his different way of thinking. "Your mind isn't limited by our traditions," Hana admitted on the 3rd day. "You suggest things no Dolkin would think of." "Some of my ideas are probably stupid," Jinwoo said with a smile. "Most are," Hana agreed, but there was a lighter tone to her voice. "But some are interesting." On the 4th day, Queen Mireille visited the laboratory. She looked tired, her shell less bright than usual. "How is the work progressing?" she asked. "We may have a new approach," Hana said, showing the Queen their results. Jinwoo suggested treating the DNA like a building with a bad foundation. "Instead of fixing each broken piece, we could reinforce the entire structure." The Queen nodded. "That sounds promising. But will it work?" "We won't know until we try it on a living subject," Hana said. "Then try it on me," the Queen said. Both Jinwoo and Hana looked shocked. "My Queen, that's too dangerous," Hana protested. "The treatment isn't ready. It could harm you." "Our people need their Queen," Jinwoo added. "You shouldn't take such risks." Queen Mireille's eyes softened as she looked at Jinwoo. "Your concern touches me, my human. But a good leader doesn't ask others to take risks she won't take herself." "At least let us test it more first," Hana insisted. The Queen seemed about to argue when she suddenly swayed on her feet. Jinwoo rushed forward to steady her. "You're not well," he said, helping her to a chair. "It's nothing," the Queen said. "Just tired." Hana scanned the Queen with a small device. Her eyes widened at the results. "My Queen, your cellular decay has advanced. You need treatment now." "Not yet," Queen Mireille said firmly. "Others need it more." After the Queen left, Jinwoo turned to Hana. "She's very sick, isn't she?" Hana nodded slowly. "The Queen has been giving her treatments to others. High-ranking officials get treatments every month. The Queen has not taken hers in over a year. She's sacrificing herself for her people," Jinwoo said softly. "Yes," Hana agreed. "Now do you see why she clings to this prophecy? Why she believes in you so strongly? Without hope, she has nothing." Jinwoo looked at the lab equipment around him. At the screen showing broken DNA. At the samples of his own cells that might hold the answer. "Then we need to work faster," he said. For her sake. Hana made a sound of agreement. For the first time, they were truly working together toward a common goal. But as they worked late into the night, Jinwoo noticed something strange on one of the screens. It showed plans for what looked like weapons, and a map of Earth. He said nothing to Hana, but worry grew in his mind. What were the Dolkins really planning? Jinwoo couldn't sleep. The images he had seen in the lab kept playing in his mind. Weapons, a map of Earth. What did it mean? Morning came, and Taejin arrived to escort him to breakfast. Jinwoo decided to ask a careful question. "Taejin, does the Queen plan to visit Earth someday?" The guard's body stiffened. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Jinwoo said with a shrug. "I miss my home." Taejin relaxed slightly. "The Queen has not shared such plans with me. I am just a guard." But Jinwoo noticed how Taejin avoided meeting his eyes. He was hiding something. After breakfast, Jinwoo went to the lab. Hana was already there, working on their cure. "I think we're close," she said when she saw him. "Your idea about reinforcing the entire DNA structure is working in tests." But Jinwoo couldn't focus on the work. The map of Earth kept flashing in his mind. "Hana," he said slowly, "what will happen to Earth after you have your cure?" Hana's movements paused for just a second. "Nothing. Why would anything happen?" "I saw plans yesterday," Jinwoo said. "On that screen over there. Weapons. A map of Earth." Hana turned to face him. "You should not concern yourself with things you don't understand." "I understand weapons," Jinwoo said. "I understand invasion plans." Before Hana could reply, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the lab. What's happening? Jinwoo asked. Is it the Vorax again? No, Hannah said, moving to a screen. It's internal. Some kind of fight inside the ship. The door to the lab slid open. Taejun rushed in, his weapon drawn. We must go, he said to Jinwoo. Now. The queen is in danger. What's happening? Jinwoo asked as they ran through the halls. Doyoon. Taejun spat the name like it tasted bad. The queen's cousin. He has wanted the throne for years. Now he makes his move. They turned a corner and came face to face with 3 Dolken guards. But these guards had different markings on their shells. Stop, one of them ordered. The human comes with us, said another. By order of Doyoon, new ruler of the Dolkens. He is not ruler yet, Taejun growled, and fired his weapon. A fight broke out. Taejun was brave, but there were 3 enemy guards. One of them shot him in the leg. He fell with a cry of pain. Run, Taejun shouted to Jinwoo. Find the queen. Jinwoo didn't want to leave Taejun, but more enemy guards were coming. He turned and ran down a side passage. Behind him, he heard Taejun still fighting. Jinwoo ran until his lungs burned. He had no idea where to find the queen. The ship was huge, and parts of it were still strange to him. He slowed down when he realized no one was following him. As he caught his breath, he heard voices from a room nearby. One of them was the queen's. He moved closer to listen. The time for waiting is over, said a male voice Jinwoo didn't recognize. The human's DNA is all we need. We take it, then we take Earth. Their world is rich, their people are weak. They will serve us well. That was never the plan, Doyoon, Queen Mireille said. We need their help, not their world. You are weak. The male voice, Doyoon, said. The decay has made you soft. Humans are nothing but resources for us to use. Jinwoo's blood ran cold. So there were plans to invade Earth. The queen had lied to him. Or had she? She seemed to be arguing against the invasion. He had to do something. But what? He was just one human against armed Dolkens. Then he remembered the lab. Maybe there was something there he could use. Before he could move, the door to the room slid open. A tall Dolken with a dark red shell stepped out. This must be Doyoon. 4 guards followed him, dragging Queen Mireille between them. Her shell was cracked in places, leaking blue fluid. They were hurting her. Without thinking, Jinwoo jumped from his hiding place. Stop, he shouted. Leave her alone. The guards turned in surprise. Doyoon looked at Jinwoo and made a sound like laughter. The human pet comes to save his queen, Doyoon said. How touching. He raised his weapon and fired. Pain exploded in Jinwoo's shoulder. He fell to the floor as darkness closed in around him. The last thing he saw was Queen Mireille's face. She looked at him with her purple eyes full of sadness. I'm sorry, my human, she whispered. This was never what I wanted. Then everything went black. Jinwoo woke up in a small, dark room. His shoulder hurt badly where Doyoon had shot him. Someone had wrapped it with a bandage, but it still bled a little. He tried to stand but felt too weak. The room looked like a storage closet. No windows, just one door with no handle on the inside. A prison. Think, Jinwoo, he whispered to himself. You need to escape. He checked his pockets. Nothing useful. Then he looked around the room. There were boxes of supplies and some tools on shelves. Maybe he could use something. He forced himself to stand despite the pain. On one shelf, he found a small tool that looked like a screwdriver. On another, there was a thin metal rod. This might work, he said. During his days on the ship, Jinwoo had studied how Dolken doors worked. They slid open when the right circuits connected. If he could reach the control panel, he pried open a small section of wall next to the door. Behind it were wires and circuits, just as he had hoped. Using the metal rod, he connected 2 circuits. Nothing happened. Come on, he muttered. He tried a different combination. Suddenly, The door slid open halfway, then stopped. It was enough. Jinwoo squeezed through and found himself in an empty hallway. "I need to find the queen," he said to himself. "And Hana. We need to finish the cure." Jinwoo moved carefully through the ship. He could hear fighting in some areas. Doyoum's guards were everywhere, but they weren't looking for a single human. He was able to hide and slip past them. He made his way to the lab, hoping Hana might be there. The lab door was locked, but he used the same trick as before to open it. Inside, Hana was working frantically at a screen. She spun around when the door opened, holding a weapon. "You," she said when she saw Jinwoo. "I thought Doyoum's guards had you." "They did," Jinwoo said. "I escaped. Hana, we need to finish the cure. It's the only way to stop this." Hana lowered her weapon. "The cure is ready. I completed it after you were taken. But Doyoum controls the medical bay. We can't use it." "Then we need to take back control," Jinwoo said. "Where is the queen?" "Doyoum is holding her in the throne room. He plans to force her to step down, then he will kill her. He has too many guards. We can't fight our way in." Jinwoo thought for a moment. "Then we don't fight. We trick them." "What do you mean?" Hana asked. "Dulcans always expect direct attacks, right? That's your way. But humans have learned to be sneaky when we're outnumbered." Jinwoo explained his plan. They would use the ship's systems against Doyoum. First, they needed to find Taejun. They found him in a medical room, his leg bandaged but still able to walk. He was surprised to see Jinwoo alive. "The queen?" Taejun asked. "Still alive, but in danger," Jinwoo said. "We have a plan." Together, the three of them went to the ship's control center. It was guarded, but Hana knew a back way in. Once inside, Jinwoo went to work on the controls. Dulcan ships have systems to control air, light, and sound in each room, right? He asked Hana. "Yes," she confirmed. "What are you thinking?" "Watch and learn," Jinwoo said with a small smile. He used the controls to turn off the lights in hallways leading away from the throne room. Then he made the air colder in some sections and warmer in others. Finally, he triggered warning sounds in distant parts of the ship. "Doyoum's guards will think there are problems all over the ship," Jinwoo explained. "They'll split up to check. That will leave fewer guards with Doyoum." It worked better than they hoped. On the security screens, they watched as Doyoum sent most of his guards to check the false alarms. "Now for the next part," Jinwoo said. He turned to Taejun. "Can you get us close to the throne room without being seen?" Taejun nodded. There are service passages that few know about. They made their way through narrow passages until they were near the throne room. Only 4 guards remained with Doyoum. The queen was there too, looking weak but still alive. "How do we get past the guards?" Hana whispered. Jinwoo held up a small device he had made in the control room. "We don't fight them. We distract them." He pressed a button on the device. Inside the throne room, all the screens suddenly lit up with flashing images. A loud, high-pitched sound filled the room. The guards covered their ears, confused and in pain. "Dulcans have more sensitive hearing than humans," Jinwoo explained. "Now." They rushed into the throne room. Taejun and Hana quickly overtook the distracted guards. Doyoum turned, his face twisted in anger and pain. "Human," he hissed. "How did you?" Before he could finish, Jinwoo hit him with a charge from one of the guards' weapons. Doyoum fell to the floor, not dead but unable to move. Jinwoo ran to the queen. "We need to get you to the medical bay. Hana has the cure ready." 1 month had passed since the fight with Doyoum. The Dulcan ship had reached its home world, a beautiful planet with 3 moons and vast oceans of purple water. Jinwoo stood at a large window in the royal palace, looking out at the alien city spread below. The buildings were tall and made of the same crystal-like material as the ship. Dulcans moved about their daily lives, looking healthier than those he had first met. "Enjoying the view?" Queen Mireille asked as she entered the room. Jinwoo turned and smiled. The queen looked stronger now. Her shell glowed with health, and she moved with easy grace. "It's amazing," Jinwoo said. "I never thought I would see another world." "The cure is working better than we hoped," the queen said. "Already, the youngest children show no signs of the decay. Hannah says in 3 generations, it will be gone completely." The cure Hannah had created using Jinwoo's DNA had saved the Dolken people. It had been given first to the children, then to essential workers, and finally to everyone else. Even Doyoon had received it, though he remained in prison for his crimes. "What will happen to Earth now?" Jinwoo asked. It was a question that had worried him, even after the queen had assured him that Doyoon's invasion plans would never happen. "That depends on you," Queen Mireille said. "On me? How?" The queen moved closer to him. "You have a choice to make, my human. You can return to Earth if you wish. We will take you home with our thanks, and a promise never to interfere with your world." Jinwoo thought about home, about his small apartment in Seoul, his job at the research center, the life he had left behind. It all seemed so far away now, like a dream. "Or," he asked, sensing there was another option. "Or you could stay here," Queen Mireille said softly. "With me, as my consort and advisor. Help me build a bridge between our worlds." Jinwoo looked at her in surprise. "Your consort? Like a husband?" "Similar, yes," the queen said, "though our ways are different from yours. You would help me lead my people, and perhaps in time, we could approach Earth openly, not as invaders, but as friends." "That's a lot to think about," Jinwoo said. "I understand," the queen replied. "But know this, you are special to me, beyond the prophecy, beyond your DNA. When I first saw you, I felt something I had never felt before, something Dolkens don't usually feel." "What was that?" Jinwoo asked. "I believe humans call it a connection, a bond. Some might even call it love, though that word is new to us." Jinwoo thought about his time with the Dolkens, about how he had grown to care for Taejin, who was now the head of the Queen's Guard, about how he had come to respect Hannah, who now led the scientific council, and about the queen herself, who had risked everything for her people. He had changed during his time here. Earth was his home, but could it still be his only home? "If I stay," Jinwoo said slowly, "I have conditions." The queen tilted her head, listening. "Earth must be approached with honesty and respect. No secret plans, no taking people without permission. A true alliance between equals." "I agree to your terms," Queen Mireille said without hesitation. And Jinwoo continued, "I want to build a communication system between our worlds, so I can still speak to people on Earth, so I'm not completely cut off from my home." "Our engineers will make it so," the queen promised. Jinwoo looked out the window again at the alien world that had become familiar to him. Then he turned back to the queen. "Then I will stay," he said. "At least for now." The joy in Queen Mireille's eyes was clear to see. She stepped forward and embraced him, just as she had on their first meeting. But this time, Jinwoo hugged her back. "My human," she breathed. "And you, my queen," Jinwoo replied. 3 months later, a Dolken ship appeared in Earth's sky. But this time, it came openly, with messages of peace. On the great viewing screen that showed the ship to the world, 2 figures stood side by side. An alien queen and a human man. "People of Earth," Jinwoo said to the billions watching below, "I have an amazing story to tell you." And so began a new chapter in the history of both worlds. A chapter of cooperation instead of conquest, of sharing knowledge instead of stealing it, of 2 very different species learning that together they could reach heights neither could achieve alone. All because an alien queen hugged a human engineer and called him her own. The end.